Good afternoon. Welcome to What's New in Aerospace here at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. My name is Tom Lastman. I'm one of the curators in rocketry here at the museum. I'd like to welcome you all this afternoon. Our session today is Countdown to Launch. So we're going to open up with a brief launch video and we'll get started.
Stand by to pick up the count for Maven mission. On my mark, time will be T-minus 6 hours, 20 minutes, and counting. 3, 2, 1, mark. T-minus 6 hours, 20 minutes, and counting.
All stations, this is the NLM with a poll for readiness to proceed into the Maven launch countdown and management on station poll. NASA CE.
NASA CE go.
NASA MIM.
Omar, NASA MIM is go.
SMA.
SMA go.
SMD.
Go.
NAM.
NASA advisory team is ready.
The NASA team is ready to proceed into the Maven countdown. All stations, this is the NLM on the NLM net. I would like to proceed into our cryogenic tanking poll. NASA CE.
Go.
NASA MIM.
Go.
SMA.
SMA go.
SMD.
Maven is go for power launch.
NAM.
NAM is ready.
The NASA team is ready to proceed into cryo tanking.
Centaur LO2 at 95%. Topping started.
Roger.
Yes, sir, this is LWO for the L-30 weather brief on Weather Brief CC Local and Channel 8. You should have satellite picture of the peninsula of Florida on your CCTV monitor at this time. The blue quarter there is the amble cloud tool. We continue to have amble cloud streaming over the pad. It is below criteria, so we are go.
T-minus 4 minutes and holding. This is a program 10-minute hold.
All stations, this is the NLM on the NLM net with a poll for readiness to proceed with releasing the hold at T-minus 4 minutes and final launch readiness. NASA CE.
NASA CE go.
NASA MIM.
MIM is go.
SMA.
Go.
SMD.
SMD is go for final count.
NAM.
NAM is ready.
The NASA team is ready to proceed into Maven's terminal count.
On my mark, the time will be T-minus 4 minutes and counting. 3, 2, 1, mark. T-minus 4 minutes and counting.
Rock, report range status.
Range green.
Status check.
Go Atlas.
Go Centaur.
Go Maven.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Main engine start, ignition, and liftoff of the Atlas V with Maven, looking for clues about the evolution of Mars through its atmosphere.
That's pretty exciting stuff. The launch of a new space mission for our nation. Hello, I'm Jim Norman, and I'm privileged to work at NASA with some brilliant men and women in pursuit of NASA's vision to reach for new heights, to reveal the unknown, so that what we do and learn will benefit all humankind. NASA's mission is to drive advances in science, technology, aeronautics, and space exploration, and to enhance knowledge, education, innovation, economic vitality, and stewardship of our planet. Our goals are to expand the frontiers of knowledge of space, to advance our understanding of the Earth, and to serve the American public. Our approach is to invest in next-generation technologies, to spur innovation, to inspire students to be our next generation of scientists, engineers, explorers, and educators, and to expand our partnerships. I'm part of the team at NASA known as the Launch Services Program. We're responsible for launching our nation's civil sector, weather, communication, and scientific Earth observation satellites, as well as the satellites and probes that go to other planets, that investigate the sun, that explore the regions of space and space phenomena. The Launch Services team does not build these marvelous works of wonder that perform these inspiring, important missions. But we're integral to buying the commercial launch services smartly and seeing that our satellites become expertly integrated into that launch system and that our missions attain the proper orbit and placement in space. In order to achieve that, a rocket has to accelerate the payload to a velocity in excess of 17,000 miles per hour, or greater than Mach 22. Here at the Air and Space Museum, not even the fastest airplane in the collection can come close to that speed. That required velocity, as well as the unforgiving environment of space, is what makes launch such a difficult technological and engineering endeavor. And it is something to be proud of when the mission goes well. So how do we do what we do? Well, we at NASA, we partner with industry, American industry, the engineers and technicians at companies like Lockheed Martin, Orbital Sciences Corporation, United Launch Alliance, and the Space Exploration Corporation, or SpaceX. So if our team isn't the office that builds the satellite, and if our NASA team doesn't build the launch vehicle, but still helps put the satellite in space, how would you describe what my office does? You might think of what we do as being the bridge between the satellite that needs to get to space and the rocket that can take it there. As a matter of fact, we view ourselves as Earth's bridge to space.
NASA team's ready.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2,
We're approaching Mach
1. Liftoff, and Pegasus is away.
Over 200,000 feet. Vehicle's recovering very nicely from the liftoff transient. We're looking real good. We're now past Mach 1. The vehicle is now traveling faster than the speed of sound.
The Launch Services Program is based at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, but its reach is felt throughout the United States and research labs all over the world. The Launch Services Program has given life to some of our nation's greatest space achievements. The Mars rovers, Stardust, Genesis, and New Horizons are just a few of their recent missions. Charged with selecting launch vehicles for NASA's science and exploration missions, LSP works with industry partners to define requirements and determine the best launch vehicle for each mission. Expendable launch vehicles are part of a balanced and diversified launch capability for NASA. Logging more than 50 launches to date and amassing an impressive record of success, LSP provides an invaluable service to NASA's science and exploration community. As the primary liaison between the spacecraft and the launch vehicle, LSP is the critical step in making a mission a reality. Once the spacecraft and launch vehicle are complete, LSP coordinates the timely rendezvous of rocket and spacecraft at the launch site. The launch site is the place where the mission really comes together. The spacecraft is mounted to the assembled rocket, and final testing and checkouts are conducted. If all systems are go, the mission is declared ready to launch. Launching one mission to space is hard enough. Try juggling a manifest containing up to 30 missions at any given time. These achievements are a result of the dedicated professionals at NASA's Launch Services Program, a team guided by excellence and driven by a passion for space. Years of reviews, certifications, and hard work pay off with a roar of engines and a brilliant trail of fire and smoke.
Wow, that's exciting, and that's my organization, Launch Services Program. Good afternoon, my name's Tim Dunn, and I'm very proud to be a launch director for LSP. We have an amazing team assembled at the Kennedy Space Center, and we get to do our job in a lot of exotic places. I want to tell you a little bit about the rockets, where we were and where we're going, and certainly where we are today. So here's a nice chart of rockets since the 1960s all the way to our next generation of rockets. So if you start over here on this side of the chart, these rockets, and for the folks on the other side of the room here, those are the rockets that we started designing back in the 1950s for the humans to fly on. Rockets like the Redstone, the Atlas, the Titan, and then certainly the Saturn rockets, Saturn I and Saturn V, the big Saturn V rocket, the one that took our men to the moon. Certainly the space shuttle we're all familiar with. Space shuttle flew for 30 years from the early 80s till we retired it in about 3 years ago. And what we do in LSP is we launch science and robotic missions. So no humans on board, but certainly very thrilling missions that we're putting in space and going to our planets. And that's this center group of rockets. And over here, it's a Delta II is on the left, the little blue rocket, the Atlas V, the Falcon 9, and the Delta IV. And also, if you see this one in the top, this airplane that's dropping, that's actually a rocket that comes from the belly of an airplane called a Pegasus. So we in LSP get to work that bridge between the spacecraft and the launch vehicles on those rockets. Now, the launch vehicles on the far right sides of the charts, those are the ones that NASA is designing today to carry humans deep into space for the next generation. And we hope to be flying those, and those are called the SLS, the Space Launch System. And we're going to have the first test launches as soon as 3 years from now. So that's going to be very exciting. Now, where do we launch these from? Next chart, please. So I said we get to go to some really thrilling places. Kwajalein, that's an atoll in the South Pacific that we've taken our Pegasus rocket to and have staged launches from there. Kodiak, that's a small launch pad in Alaska that we've done missions from. Wallops, very close here to our nation's capital, out on the Virginia shore, the Wallops Flight Facility. But certainly the most prevalent launch sites for our missions are at Cape Canaveral on the eastern coast of Florida and Vandenberg Air Force Base on the central coast of California. So, next chart, please. Why do we launch most of those from the two coasts of our country? Here's a beautiful map of the United States. And you'll see here is the peninsula of Florida, and right there is the Kennedy Space Center. And then on the western coast, you'll see off the central coast of California, that's Vandenberg Air Force Base. So depending on the mission for our spacecraft, depends on where we choose to launch from. If we need to have a mission that goes into what we call a polar orbit, that would be an orbit that circles the Earth kind of north to south and then south back to north across the north and south poles. As the Earth rotates underneath the satellite, you would have a mission that could then map very frequently as the Earth turns most of the surface of the Earth. And so those polar missions we launch from the Central California coast there at Vandenberg. And so a lot of missions that you go on the internet, you have Digital Globe, or maybe you go to Google Maps. A lot of that data comes down from satellites that are doing that near-Earth mapping on those polar missions. But say we want to see a much larger picture, maybe a picture of the United States like that. We need to go farther out into space, into what we call a geostationary or geosynchronous orbit, kind of over the equator. We would launch off of the coast of Florida to go out to the east, take advantage of the Earth's rotational speed, and head out and get into an equatorial orbit, coming around the Earth more like this. And there's a really fascinating thing when you get out at about 22,000 miles from the surface of the Earth with your satellite. You're rotating at the same rotational velocity as the Earth, so your satellite stays over the same point on the Earth's surface at that time. So you're able to take beautiful pictures of whole continents, and you can see weather patterns develop. You can go home and take advantage of things like watching your TV, maybe DirecTV or the Dish Network. That's where they like those, because their satellite is always over the same relative point over the United States. So for our science missions, we take advantage of those both for polar launches and for equatorial launches. Okay, next chart. So what is LSP doing today? Well, we've had a couple of very exciting launches in 2014, and right now we're getting ready for 3 neat missions in 2015, followed by 5 missions in 2016. We're going to do a soil moisture mapping mission on a Delta II rocket from Vandenberg. That's coming up in January of next year, followed by the Magnetosphere Multiscale Mission, MMS, on an Atlas V from Cape Canaveral in March of next year. And then the JSON-3, which is an ocean surveillance satellite. It's going to measure a lot of things about the oceans. That's going to launch from Vandenberg in March, April of next year. 2016 is a very busy year for LSP. What are we doing there? We're going to Mars with an InSight mission. It's going to land on the surface of Mars. We do a GOES-R satellite. That's one of those equatorial geosynchronous weather satellites. OSIRIS-REx. That's a really neat mission where we're going to go to an asteroid and actually bring a sample back from the asteroid. So we'll launch it in 2016. We'll rendezvous with an asteroid in 2018. And the sample will come back from the asteroid in 2023. So it's a little bit out there, but a really thrilling mission. Cygnus is one that's going to study ocean winds on the surface of the ocean. And then the JPSS mission in late 2016 is a weather satellite that's going to be launched into polar orbit from Vandenberg. Okay, now I'd like to show you what does it mean to get a spacecraft ready on a rocket to do what you got to see in that first thrilling video on launch day. Next chart, or video, please. Okay, that's an airplane, not a rocket, right? So that airplane is bringing in one of our spacecraft, and it is the Maven spacecraft, which is the Mars probe that we sent into orbit around Mars last year. This is the Maven spacecraft being worked on at Kennedy Space Center. This was just a little over a year ago that we launched this mission. Here's a solar array lighting test. The solar arrays are what give the power to the spacecraft. And in this lighting test, we're flowing current through those solar cells to make sure they work, and that's what you saw lighting up. The solar panel mate, after those solar panels are checked out, they're mated to the Maven spacecraft. And then we do a deploy test, because we certainly can't launch a spacecraft with those solar panels fully deployed, so they have to be stowed. This is another solar panel light test where we're actually illuminating all of the panels on the ground, making sure that they're going to generate the required power that the spacecraft will need. This is a spin test. We make sure everything is properly balanced before we then encapsulate with a protective shroud around the spacecraft, what we call a payload fairing. And that is the Maven payload fairing around the spacecraft. Now, what about the rocket? Maven launched on an Atlas V. The Atlas V is built in Decatur, Alabama, and it's brought by ship down to Florida. We offload it, bring it out to the launch pad, and that's the first stage going from horizontal to vertical and being placed in the vertical integration facility that's just about a quarter mile away from the launch pad. Here's the second stage of the Atlas V. This is called Centaur. It's being erected and mated to the top of the first stage. And then here's the spacecraft again, fully protected with its payload fairing, being brought out at night. We like to do that for the temperature is lower in Florida at night, so we can protect and keep the spacecraft safe. We bring it out to Space Launch Complex 41, which is where Atlas V launches at the Cape. Early in the morning, after getting there we arrive about 7 a.m. with that from the payload processing facility, erect it into the vertical integration facility, and then very meticulously and carefully, we're lowering and mating the Maven spacecraft onto the top of the Atlas V rocket. So you see umbilicals that are coming off of the rocket. That's air conditioning and that's power. You're going to see those again when we get out to the launch pad. And this is the morning, 2 days ahead of launch, that we roll out from the vertical integration facility, take that about quarter-mile trek slightly uphill to the launch pad. So you'll see that is the mount that we launch from. There's a great view of some of our partners. We work with United Launch Alliance. We work with the United States Air Force at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. So we have a very encompassing team, and it takes a lot of very smart people to launch these rockets. So you'll see we're moving the entire launch vehicle with the mated spacecraft up the hill here to Complex 41. That's a great shot. You see those umbilicals coming over. They're providing all of the necessary propellants and gases and air conditioning to the rocket. Here we're going in place. You'll see those towers around the rocket. What are those towers for? There's a lot of lightning in Florida, and lightning and rockets and satellites do not mix. So fortunately, those lightning towers protect our rockets while we're on the pad. And there's a nice shot, up close shot of the Maven spacecraft on Complex 41. And the beautiful shot there with the Atlantic in the background. Okay, so that's a flow. And there weren't a whole lot of people that you saw in that, but I can assure you there's a whole lot of folks that it takes to get that spacecraft and that rocket ready to launch. And I'm just proud that I get to sit on console on launch day and represent NASA and represent the launch team and get to launch these rockets. Okay, so wanted to share one more animation video with you. So you saw the lead up, the countdown, you saw us processing. This is what happens post-launch. We're coming off the pad at Complex 41. Got a beautiful shot of the RD-180 first stage engine powering the Atlas V during its first stage portion of flight. We'll burn for about 4.5 minutes, and then we'll separate the first stage. So you see the first stage coming off, and the second stage Centaur engine will then light. And for the Maven mission, since we're headed to Mars, we burn that for 9.5 minutes. As soon as we're out of the dense part of the atmosphere, we can get rid of that weight of the payload fairing. So you'll see the payload fairing deployment, and you'll see a beautiful animation here of the Maven spacecraft. After that initial 9.5 minute burn of Centaur, we cut off, we coast over Africa, that's Madagascar in the background, and we'll relight for about 5 minutes. We're on our trajectory now to Mars, and we're going to separate the spacecraft off the coast of Africa here, and the next step for Maven will be Mars.
Boy, do I have a cool job or what. I get to spend a lot of time with a lot of interesting people that work in the space business, including my colleagues here. And I'm so proud to be part of this group and part of NASA. My name is Albert Sierra, and I represent the Flight Projects Office for the Launch Services Program. So the Flight Projects Office is the office that's responsible for interfacing with the spacecraft projects that we launch. You all mentioned we're hearing a lot about Maven. That's one of our missions. So each of these projects are from different NASA centers or sometimes other agencies like NOAA, where we get the weather satellites. And so our job is to interface with them and to prepare them for that launch that they are so excited to get involved in. So if we go to the next, I have one chart there. This is, so our solar system. Launch Services Program has been active for about 18 years now, and we have launched 75 missions successfully. That's a lot of missions. Everything from missions to the moon. We have missions that have gone to various planets like Mars, some that are on their way to Pluto, Saturn. We have probes that are orbiting the sun. We have a lot of, besides all these planet and other explorations, we like to understand our Earth. So we have a lot of spacecraft that are orbiting the Earth, like Tim mentioned, some of the weather satellites. We have satellites that are measuring water temperatures, winds, taking pictures of the geography of the land and how it's changing over time. We have active weather satellites that you guys see every day in your TV, on the TV when you watch the news, tracking hurricanes, studying the atmosphere, you know, whether how our ozone layer is acting, whether some portions of the Earth are warmer than others, observing how our Earth is changing. That's how we learn about the planet we live in. And by studying our planet, we also try to extend our knowledge to what we learn from the other planets that we're visiting. So if we go to the next chart, I'll give you an example. You've heard a lot about Maven. So Maven, we launched Maven last year in November of 2013. And that mission, it took 10 months to get to Mars. It is now orbiting Mars. And its objective is to study the atmosphere of Mars. We don't really understand why Mars is the way it is. So trying to understand whether how the components of the carbon dioxide and other components of the atmosphere are escaping the planet may help us understand not only the history of Mars, but how maybe it relates to Earth and whether something like that will ever happen to Earth or maybe or not, hopefully not. But anyway, that's what our scientists are after. If we go to the next one, I think I have another mission, New Horizons. So this mission we launched in 2006, and it's got a 9.5-year journey to the dwarf planet Pluto. Again, we can't see that very easily from Earth with any kind of telescope. So we try and send a probe out there with instruments that it could look at the geography of the planet, also study the atmosphere and see how similar or not it is, and what role it plays in our solar system. So basically, we've been involved in so many different missions, and I am so excited about it. And hopefully, you've learned some of these things in school as well. If you go to my next page here, so this is a NASA chart, a lot of words. What I wanted to show here is it takes a lot of preparation and a lot of time to get these missions accomplished. Sometimes over 10 to 15 years of planning. How it all starts, you have scientists and engineers get together with a plan. They want to come up with it's kind of like doing an experiment. You want to understand something, you want to measure maybe something, or maybe explore, right? So you have to come up with a set of instruments and a goal for your mission. And so they plan these missions and around these scientific goals. But it takes a lot to pull these things together because these instruments may not even exist. They're trying to measure things that it's easy to do in a laboratory maybe, or when you're a geologist and you're going up a mountain and looking at the rocks. That's easy to do when you're right there and you have all your equipment and people next to you. But when you're trying to do it millions and millions of miles away, it's very complicated. It's not easy to do. So it takes a lot of time to do. These folks get together and they form a team and they formulate projects. So they work as projects. And in this projects, you have to work within a certain amount of budget that has been allotted for that. You have to work within a schedule. And so these teams work together hand in hand to develop not only the plan for the spacecraft, but now we have to figure out how do we get them into space. And that's our job. So early on, the folks in my team will get engaged with the spacecraft folks, and we start giving them information about the rockets that are available. And we start giving them information not only about what's available, but how much they cost and what they need to do to survive the launch. Let me tell you something about the launch. You heard the noise, right? It's pretty loud. Well, when you're up close, it's very loud. It's a very violent event when a rocket launches. The Earth shakes. The whole rocket is shaking. It's accelerating very quickly. And you see all that fire and smoke. It's a very violent event. So the spacecraft has to be designed to withstand that launch. Imagine, when you hear something like maybe like a firecracker or something, explosion, you can feel that, a shock, that thump. Well, this is, 20,000 times more explosive than that. It's a lot of energy. So it has to design this, so the teams have to design these spacecraft to withstand that launch environment. That's the first part. Then the second part is now it has to survive the space environment. Space, there's a lot of radiation. There's very extreme hot and cold. And so you have to combine all of these into the design of the spacecraft. Once they have the spacecraft designed, we match them up with the right rocket that accommodates their size and that can accomplish the orbit that they need. And it takes us about 3 years to do very critical analyses to make sure that the rocket and the spacecraft fit together properly and they're going to function as one. so that they can accomplish their mission. The spacecraft gets built in one area, wherever the spacecraft team is. The rockets get built, like Tim mentioned, and in somewhere else in the country, depending on which company is building them. Together, when they meet, they have to fit exactly together, not only mechanical-wise, but we have to do electrical connections, and they have to fit inside the fairing. All those things have to come together very nicely, and that comes with a lot of hard work and a lot of planning. The other important part is the schedule. They have to come on time. So they show up about 3 months prior to launch. We get them ready for launch, like Tim mentioned, and then off they go. On launch day, if all is successful, we have a mission that's on its way to perform their science. Next chart. So I want to shift gears a little bit. So that's basically the life cycle of a mission. So NASA has a program that's targeted for students, and it's a way to involve students in developing a small spacecraft called a CubeSat. It's called ELANA, Educational Launch of Nanosatellites. And what we do through this program is that we involve students in the high school and university ages, where they have to propose a mission to perform some form of science, or maybe a proof of technology. And through this process, the students get an opportunity to learn how to interact as a team, to formulate projects, and to basically develop a small spacecraft. We Launch Services Program are a critical part of this ELANA program, because we are the ones that provide the launch for them. We get to put these nano satellites, these CubeSats. I'm going to sit down there. This is what a CubeSat looks like. We get to arrange launches for them on the rockets that we launch with primary missions. If we go to the next page. So it's basically the same cycle I explained earlier about the primary missions. We're lucky today to have Alishan Hassan. He is a student that actually participated in a CubeSat mission called
TJ CubeSat.
Thank you.
TJ
CubeSat, which was launched last year out of Wallop. So I'm going to hand it over to Alishan. So,
hey, how are you guys doing? Excellent, excellent. Now, I've got a question to pose towards you. How many of you have done something that you thought was really cool? Excellent. And how many of you feel that there's something out there that's really cool that you wish to do? That's what I'd like to see. To all of those who raised your hands, I salute you, because doing cool stuff is part of what makes life awesome. So back in 2005, an intern at Orbital Sciences Corporation posed the question, could our high school build a satellite? Now, the response was just, chuckles and giggles. I'm like, high school, how could they build a satellite? But thanks to a couple of enthusiastic engineers, we came to the conclusion that it was actually a feasible project, that a high school could build a satellite. Now, there are a couple of problems to overcome, one of which is cost, naturally. Satellites used to cost, millions of dollars, even at the university level. But thanks to the advent of the CubeSat platform, we've managed to get that amount down to below $1 million. In fact, you can build a bunch of these for about $50,000. That puts it well within reach of universities, and actually brings it down to the K-12 level as well. The second issue, of course, is having students who actually have the ability to build such a thing. It's unlikely that a high school will actually provide all the prerequisites to develop a satellite. And you have to focus on orbital mechanics, advanced circuit design, 3D computer-aided design, and it's a tough challenge. But that's why we're lucky that we had Orbital Sciences behind us to provide mentorship, not only in terms of monetary help, but as well as guidance from experts. And with great thanks to them, in 2006, the project started up. And one thing that Orbital definitely helped us do was make the project into not just, some really cool thing that, we're sending into space, but it was also for something a bit more noble. Our primary mission, which was to serve as an educational outreach, to inspire K-12 individuals to take part in science and technology and to do these cool things. So that's basically the gist of what we wanted to do with it. But then, how about the function? There were a lot of, good ideas posed, simple things like cameras and some crazy contraptions. But ultimately, we decided to use a payload that was a text-to-speech module. So what it would do is that you would go online, you would type in a message, it would go through our servers to our ground station, we would transmit it up to our satellite, then it would broadcast it back down to Earth on ham radio frequencies. So imagine a situation like this. It's the homecoming game. Satellite is overhead right now. We send it a message cheering our team on. How could we ever lose a game like that?
So maybe can you tell the folks here what was I guess the most challenging part of working a project like TJ said?
Well, there were quite a few challenges that did come up throughout the project. Honestly, the hardest part was the final 10% of the project because the way the project was actually laid out was very, very similar to the industry. You had multiple subsystems like power, telecommunications, and sensors working under one systems engineer. And initially, we could work pretty openly. We could get, all the big things knocked out. And we would have a design that would work pretty well. But then when you get to the final 10%, you realize, there are small niggles that don't work. Maybe a pin is wired incorrectly. Maybe, there was like 2 boards are not communicating properly. In fact, towards the last 10%, we actually had to get rid of our flight computer and design one from scratch in-house using a completely different microcontroller. And so ultimately, it's just down to the final steps. The little nitty-gritty details, I'd say, is probably the biggest challenge we'd ever have to overcome.
That's good. And that's the proof of how these, what you have your ideas early on and your planning and your design, and you go implement them, you still find things that you didn't think of or things that may not go as you planned. And so you have to go ahead and correct those before you launch because it's a very meticulous thing that you have to work through.
Absolutely. And furthermore, think about it. These CubeSats, that picture that we have over there is the ORS-3 mission. And I think that thing broke the record for most satellites launched on a single rocket, which was then beaten a few days later by a Russian mission. But regardless, you're launching with a larger spacecraft, and you don't want your little inexpensive thing to ruin the larger spacecraft. And these are the tiny details that we really have to work out. Otherwise, it could lead to catastrophic failure. That could cost millions to billions.
That's cool. If you had one thing to say to the students here today, what would you tell them as far as ambitions or their goals for fulfilling or trying to work on a CubeSat mission in the future?
With all honesty, passion matters more than anything else. If you're really, really passionate about this, you can pretty much overcome any obstacle. There are a lot of great resources to help you out. And with this Elana program, launches are very easily available. Well, somewhat easily. And, so as long as you really have a drive to actually put something like this together, resources are available. You can come up and, do these sort of things. I would obviously suggest, having a strong focus on science, technology, engineering, and math fields. But again, I can say, at least from firsthand experience, that if it wasn't for the passion, I would not have had as much fun or gotten as far with this project as I did.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, passion, I think you're absolutely right. That's, as you all have seen, and all of us that are up here today have a lot of passion for what we do. We really enjoy being part of a great program like this. And I think that was all that I had ready. Do we have any questions that we could answer for you guys?
Let me just read the question. This question is, how is the Wallops Island launch facility after the accident last week? Will it be a while before we will see another launch from there? And this is a question from Doug.
I think
Jim, I think you can
I'll
take
take
that.
that one. Obviously, it was disappointing, and we were, supporting our industry partner, Orbital Sciences Corporation, with that unfortunate mishap. The facility, my understanding is they're still doing that evaluation. It will probably be, at least a few months before work can resume, but the investigation is active, and a lot of good work is going into it to resolve what that issue is. As I said during my remarks, launch is a very difficult endeavor, and there's a lot of energy that's required to accelerate a rocket, to accelerate a payload, to achieve orbital velocity. And sometimes minor errors can cause catastrophic events and results. NASA will take a look at that. We're actually helping at Orbital's request, and I'm certain Orbital Sciences Corporation will learn great lessons from that particular mishap.
We have a question from the floor.
My name is Jordan Hunter, and the school that I'm from is Blow Piers. What happens to the rest of the materials after the rocket lets them loose out of space?
So I'll take that one. So the question is, what happens to the rest of the rocket after the spacecraft goes into space? So the area of rocketry that we participate in is called, we use expendable launch vehicles. So we are expending the materials of the rocket as we are reaching orbit with the spacecraft. So the first stage will generally fall back into the ocean. Sometimes it is recovered. Some companies do ocean recovery. Sometimes it will just sink to the bottom of the ocean and then later become a reef off coast, ideally. The second stages sometimes return to Earth as well, either recovered or not. Or sometimes they stay in orbit for a number of years, and we sometimes use those spent stages as experimental platforms. Other times they're just orbiting until they may decay years later or may stay there for a long time and kind of get categorized as what you've heard as orbital space junk. But that's part of how we get to space is, we're having to expend the propellants, and then we deal with the materials as we need to.
Hi, my name is Scott Ebron, and I go to Friendship Blow Piers. My question was, what was the most difficult rocket you had to build?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Albert, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure, I can try that. So I think they're all difficult when I think about it. Each version of the rocket that we've used have their unique differences. Certainly, the ground-launched ones sometimes have like a solid rocket motors combined with liquid propellants, and when you combine different types of propulsion systems like that, they adds a little bit of complexity to your mission. Certainly, the Pegasus, which is an air launch, is different in the way that we have to fly an airplane to a drop zone, and it has to reach certain altitude and speed before it can drop it. And so the way I would summarize it is I think they're all difficult. Each of them has its own complexity, and we try to make sure that we understand all those complexities before we're ready to go launch.
We have another online question, so wait to bring that up, and then we'll come back here to the floor. Okay, here's the viewer question. How much of the spacecraft design is based on the launch capabilities?
Good question. For Albert.
So that's, yeah, I could take that one. So when you're designing a mission, recall I said earlier, you have to work within a budget and a schedule, and also, obviously, most important is the science objectives. You can't design a mission that doesn't fit in the current rocket fleets that we have. If you do, then you're going to stay on the ground. So one important aspect that the mission designers have to incorporate into the design of the mission is, can I make this mission work using the available rockets that are available to us through NASA, and can I afford it? within the budget that I've been allotted to do this mission. So they have to factor all those items and so that they can make the decision on what size of a spacecraft they have to build.
In the video that was shown earlier, it was the space and everybody was putting in their part of the spaceship. What would happen if one person or one group was off? What would happen to the rocket?
Oh, so I think your question is what would happen to the rocket if maybe one group made an error, or so obviously there's 1,000 things that have to go right for us to reach orbit and to make the mission. So any one of those little things that doesn't go right, if a crew member or a part of the launch crew maybe doesn't perform their task correctly on the spacecraft, there's a potential that subcomponent of the mission, that part of the spacecraft won't collect its science, or if it's on the launch vehicle side, that part of the rocket may not work. But fortunately, most of our systems, we try to build them so that they can survive at least one error. We call it that redundancy. So if one system breaks, then a second system can take over that job. So a lot of components in the rocket are redundant, so we're protecting from small errors that the launch crew may make, some human errors. But we have exceptional people that are working the rockets. We very seldom have those types of mistakes because we're always looking out for each other. You know, if Albert does a task, then I probably have a job to come back and just double check his work, and same for each of us on the team, and that's what makes our launch team so strong.
My name is Jeremy, and the school I'm coming from is Blow Pierce. My question was, what's the distance of the launcher to get to?
What's the distance of the launches?
Distance, maybe to get to space and to get to their orbits. Jim, you want to take the various?
I will, and I'll ask for your all's help as well. It depends, obviously. It depends if we're going to go to low Earth orbit. Satellites in low Earth orbit are roughly 300 nautical miles in altitude above the Earth. It can be higher than that. So 300 miles away, 500 miles away. It can be a satellite that's in geosynchronous orbit, as Tim described, 22,000 some miles away. So it just depends on what the mission of the satellite is and what the satellite needs to do. That determines the orbit that we have to go to and what rocket model we end up needing to utilize in order to get it there.
Thank you. We have one more online question, which will come up. And here we go. At what point in the mission cycle does LSP get involved?
Albert, you should take that one.
I'll take that one. We get involved pretty early. NASA uses what they call the life cycle. Each cycle has a different name. The early cycle is called formulation. That's basically where you have basic ideas of your mission, and you have instruments that are proven to get you the science that you need. At that point, we like to engage with the spacecraft customer so that they understand the rockets that are available to them and the environments that they're going to have to survive. And so once we start working with them, we become part of their team, and they become part of our team, and we work together through their whole cycle, all the way through launch.
Hello, my name is Tyrell Cole, and I wanted to say, after you launch like the ships up into space and it goes to places like the moon and in orbit, how do they come back down?
Good question.
So most of the spacecraft don't come back down. They stay in space. So those that are headed toward other planets, we have some that land, some that orbit those planets. There are very few of the missions that we launch that come back, and those that do come back are usually sample missions. We've had a couple missions that we've launched that brought a sample of a comet, for example. And so most of the missions don't come back down, and if they do, they're going to be brought into an orbit that it's called what it calls a decaying orbit, and they're brought down so that they land in the ocean. And those are mostly the Earth observing ones.
Okay, I think that wraps everything up. I'd like to thank our presenters and thank you all in the audience for coming. I'd like to also thank NASA, of course, and our sponsor, Boeing, for having this session. So, round of applause for everyone.